Got a review for you here on the channel. Today we're going to be checking out the Shotmaster Bend's Rest that I really like, and I think if you shoot barebow, you're going to like it too. So I bought this rest and put it on a couple of different barebows by now, and I really like the way it actually works, specifically for string walking and for barebow. I'm going to unbox this and show you up close how the rest works, how to set it up, and some things that I do like and don't like about it. And I just want to let you know that I did buy this with my own money, so this is an unbiased review of Ben's Arrow Rest from Shotmasters. I know Ben Rogers. I also know Tim Strickland as well. I know the both of them, and I have shot on a few world field teams with Ben Rogers, and he's a great guy, and I really actually like his rest a lot. I'm going to show you the ins and outs and the rest here in a second, but if you're interested in grabbing one of these, I will have links down in the description below to where you can grab one of these arrow rests, and that is an affiliate link. If you click that link before you shop there, it genuinely helps this channel out. And I can't thank those that click those links before you shop there enough, because that's what helps support this channel. So with all that being said, let's get into opening this thing up, and we'll cover a few different things about the rest, and I'll show you how I set it up on my bow, because it was a little tricky the first time I set it up, because frankly the instructions are lacking a little bit, and they're just not quite as descriptive, at least to the level that I would have hoped it to be. However, I've got it figured out by now, and I'll show you the quick tricks on how to make it work and make it work well for your individual setup. So the main thing about this rest is that it works kind of like a drop away, in that it reduces your crawl spread. If you're like me and you have a lower barebow anchor, or you're shooting high draw weight with very lightweight arrows, when you're shooting those close distance targets, you really got to crawl really deep down the string. And when you do that, it really induces some weird dynamics into the actual arrow. The arrow itself, even though you're shooting with your fingers, its first move doesn't actually move left and right where the archer's paradox starts. It actually bends up and down because of the depth of the actual crawl. It does happen actually with all barebow shots when you're string walking, but it's really magnified when you crawl really deep. And so what a drop away rest does is, instead of the arrow bouncing off of the rest and actually pushing down and then launching up off the rest, when that happens, it requires you to crawl further and further down the string to compensate for that bounce off the rest itself. The sniper drop away rest and things like that are designed to kind of clear out of the way and move out of the way, so that way you don't have that chance to bounce off the rest. And that's also why thin arrow rests don't work that are Olympic style recurve oriented, because those wires, such as on the Shibuya Ultima rest, which is the best rest in the world for recurve archery in my opinion, the rest is so thin, the wire is, it will actually bend and break off after not that long of a time when you have a very deep crawl. So you have to run a heavier duty rest, and that's where stuff like this AAE Free Flight Elite, which is another rest I do actually like a lot, but the wire is very big and it's very stiff, and so the arrow literally bounces off of it and makes your crawls get deeper and deeper. So instead of having a drop away mechanism, this rest, the Ben's Arrow Rest, actually is kind of like a springy. If you see here, it's almost as if it has the actual old school springy mechanism. For those of you that don't know out there, the old school springy rest is more of like a, I believe it was popularized in the barebow compound division in the NFAA world, and it's essentially a plunger because it's a spring where the arrow pushes on the side, and it also has a flexible wire itself. It's all kind of built into one. So it takes kind of the springy rest and only turns it into a springy in the vertical fashion up and down, because your plunger still comes through here, and so that's supporting the left right of the arrow, and then the rest itself is just supporting the vertical axis. And because it is so thin and you have excess material wrapped around in a coil here on this actual piece here, it makes the effective length of it even longer and allows it to be quite flexible. So it moves somewhat out of the way as that first depression downwards is coming when you're letting go of the string. Before I get into the pros and cons of this Ben's Arrow Rest, I'm going to show you how to install it here on my Win-N-Win ATF DX. So I'm going to take off my Free Flight Elite rest here and bolt on this Ben's Arrow Rest and show you some things that you want to pay attention to so that way you can speed up your setup process. So the rest comes with hardware as well as tools, which is nice. Not every rest comes with a bunch of Allen wrenches, although I do have dozens of these Allen keys by now, so it's kind of useless to constantly get them. But if you don't have them yet, you'll be happy to know that it's included in the actual rest. It's very simple to bolt this thing on, just like pretty much every other aero rest that is a bolt-on aero rest. You'll use the bolt that's supplied in the front plunger hole, and then you'll actually slide your plunger into the rear hole itself. And basically what you want to do is make sure that the rest is level as much as possible. The actual overall portion of the actual rest itself, such as this piece here. You can see how this part is level and square to the bow. You can use the grip down here as a reference, the logo as a reference, or the adjustable plunger height plate as a reference point to see, is that thing cocked up and down, or is it level or not. The next thing you want to do is you want to pay attention to where the wire rest would be touching your arrow as if it was on the actual rest. So there is some adjustment here in the slot to actually slide it forward and back, and you should, in my opinion, do your best to try to get the arrow to sit on the rest exactly under the center of the plunger. If it's really far behind or really far in front of that mechanism, like where the plunger is, when you have up and down vertical variance, it's going to have a different impact, like how much it goes up and how much it goes down compared to if you had the same kind of influence left or right. And for me, I wish I had a little bit more adjustment in this rest to actually slide it a little bit further forward, because where that wire actually supports the arrow is just a little bit too far back in my opinion. But that's not the case for every setup. It's just sometimes, depending on your actual bow geometry, how it's built, and things like that, you may run into an issue with the wire coming too close to the actual riser right here without actually being able to support the arrow and being able to get it in enough out of the way so the feathers don't catch it or the vanes don't catch it on the way by. Now I've already got this bow set up for big fat aluminum arrows, and I'm just going to show you what you need to pay attention to with this setup, because it is the worst setup, at least the worst case scenario that you need to pay attention to in the issue of this rest. But it's not really an issue, it's more of a feature. It's just something you have to work around in order to set it up properly for yourself. So what I'm talking about here is this. Pay attention to the wire. When I place this arrow on the wire, watch how much it goes down when I let it go. See how much it sags down? Now, when it's at brace height here, I can see, if I look down this shaft like this, I can see right now that my arrow is right now in the actual center of the plunger. It's because I've already adjusted this rest for another bow. But when I pull it back, you have to pull it back like this, really over-exaggerate your crawl, and draw back as far as you can, almost to your exact draw length, and point it either at a white wall, at a light, or something like that, and then look and see, and now I can see that my arrow is actually literally off the top of the plunger. And that is really what the main problem is with this rest, is that wire is so flexible. When you're running heavy arrows, this is a X20, or whatever is this? This is an RX7 with 200 grain points in them. They're actually cut very short, so they're on the fairly heavy weight end of the spectrum for an indoor arrow. And here at brace height, the heavy point has a lot more lever to actually push that rest down, and it's preloading it too much. So what you have to pay attention to is a few different things, and that's the orientation of the rest. You'll see how right now the hook is kind of headed slightly uphill, which is actually what you want. You don't want it level, because if it's level, when it gets preloaded, it starts to head downhill and then the arrow slides off the arrow rest. So you need to have it up ever so slightly. And the way you do that is pretty simple, actually. You have an Allen wrench set screw in the back here, right, to actually tighten this, this bar that goes through that section. And then you have a set screw that is up here that holds the actual rest wire onto that barrel. And so what you can do is you basically tighten this thing up tight here, and then you use the Allen wrench here as a lever. Let me turn this thing around. You use this thing as a lever to move that rest up and down like that. If you don't do it this way and you're trying to hold it still and tighten this set screw, over time, because this set screw bites into this metal piece here, this through barrel, it will pitch slightly up, slightly down as you tighten the thing up. So you got to tighten it up quite tight, almost final tight. Basically final tight for myself. Stick an Allen wrench in here and then lever the thing up and down to get the exact angle you'd like to see. So right now it's actually headed quite level, relatively speaking. It's ever so slightly uphill, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit more uphill. And then tighten this set screw back up in the back just to make sure, snug that thing up. And then all of your adjustments from this position with this slightly uphill angle needs to be done on this portion back here on the back side. This portion, when you loosen it up, the whole block slides up and down. And then that's ultimately how you set your vertical height of the arrow rest itself. So you got to get the angle up ever so slightly, and then you adjust your height up and down with this slide, I guess, per se. So what I want to do is make sure that at brace height, I let the arrow sit almost on the bottom half of the plunger, the very bottom of the plunger possibly, at brace height. So right now I'm at almost the very bottom of the plunger. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it on camera. I'll do my best here. So I'm not sure if you're able to see that, but right there, the arrow is sitting basically on the bottom of the actual plunger itself. What I'll do is I'll verify again, pointing at a white wall, draw it back, and now the arrow is sitting maybe in the top third of the plunger, just barely above center. So it's good enough for me because I can see that the arrow is not at risk of falling off the top or at the bottom of the plunger. It's kind of right in the middle or very near it. It doesn't have to be dead in the center, and I find it to not be super critical as far as actual fine tuning is concerned, exactly where the arrow is on the plunger. As long as it's near the middle, I find that to be more than sufficient. And actually slightly off center, I find to be better than in the center, because then the plunger tip itself rotates ever so slightly every shot you take, so you don't get a definitive like half moon worn into the center of the plunger. So really that's the main downfall of this rest, is that you have to make sure that you do this in the right sequence. You got to get this wire slightly pointed uphill. You then also have to make sure the actual in and out is sufficient. Too far out and you risk the vane hitting this thing a lot on the way by. Too far in and the arrow will fall off the rest. And then from there you just move your adjustment up and down to make sure that the arrow is near the center of the plunger when you're at full draw, not at brace height. So this is really the limiting factor of this rest, and pretty much the only thing that I don't like about it. Once I figured out the order of operations and how to do this more properly, it just actually makes a whole lot of sense, and I like it a lot. I wish there was a micro adjust mechanism or some sort of threaded mechanism to move the block up and down. It's just a little, I don't know, crude as far as the actual mechanism of movement, because it's easy to overshoot where you end up, needing to be, and so you kind of chase your tail a little bit. But the mechanism, once it's tight, I found that it hasn't moved on me, not once, and it's totally fine. It's a little bit on the bulky side, and worst case, sometimes my hand will actually be hit by the actual rest just because it's so far behind the actual riser. So it'll like come up and kind of catch my hand in that portion right there. So what I found is a little bit more of a simple setup with this rest compared to, say, the Sniper. And it seems to be far more robust in that it's just consistent. I don't seem to have issues when I change crawls. I don't see weird, huge jumps between gaps like I do on my Free Flight Elite when I'm crawling really, really deep. It just seems to be a very happy medium in regards to a Barebow specific rest, because it's got a little bit of give. In fact, it's got quite a bit of give, but it seems to be quite robust and consistent, and so it's kind of like blending the recurve world with those thin wires to the Barebow world needing a rest that moves out of the way when that first hit happens, when it pushes the arrow down onto the rest. So outside of it not working with a clicker, not really a problem because it's a Barebow rest, I really, really like it. I like it a lot, and it's definitely currently my rest of choice as far as Barebow is concerned. Indoor, outdoor, field, you name it. It's what I really like running on my bows right now. There are certain times where I'll run different rests, but that's when I'm using a clicker or doing other weird non-standard things with my Barebow. So I'd say overall this is a huge upgrade from a very heavy fixed wire that doesn't move out of the way in the vertical axis. And I find it to also be an upgrade for things like the sniper because it's great in concept, but I find that especially with arrows like this, the big heavy indoor arrows with heavy points, you really actually can't get the sniper to work properly with these arrows because when the point is so heavy, you have to make that magnet so resistant to dropping so you don't bump it on the way up when you lift the bow because that, lever of the arrow itself is pushing down so hard on the rest. But then when you actually shoot it, it's not soft enough to drop out of the way. So you can't use the sniper in certain scenarios if you have minimal crawl on big heavy indoor arrows. You're just not inducing enough downward pressure to make that thing drop. And I've heard some issues with those over time, especially in field archery, because of the variance of the pressure from different distances. I was able to set mine up with my X10 just fine. However, I think that this rest here kind of solves the issue with that sniper drop away, and it's absolutely something I would put just about on anybody's Barebow if they're asking me what rest to go with. So arrow rest reviews are a little more difficult to do compared to a riser, a set of limbs, or things like that, because I can't really tell you how it feels, because it's just an arrow rest, it's just an accessory. So please comment below and let me know what you think about this basic format, because it's quite basic in that I just tell you what I think about the product, tell you the pros and cons, and show you how to set it up. I'm just genuinely looking for your feedback because I've got the Gilo drop away or the Gilo Barebow rest or whatever you want to call it. I also have that to review and a few other things, including some plungers. And some of those things, it's not as complex as a riser and it's not so feedback heavy. So please, like I said, just comment below, let me know what you think about this actual format and if you liked it or not. And if you are interested in grabbing one of these Ben's Arrow Rests, please click that link down in the description below. And if you are new here and this is the first time you're seeing this channel, please hit that subscription button and the notification bell down below. Genuinely, that helps the channel out. And consider sharing these videos as well. If you have anybody that you know that has questions about any of the gear that I've reviewed on the channel or any other technical questions that they have regarding archery, I'm sure I've got a video for that. And it really helps this channel out if you share those videos with your friends. And I appreciate it very much.